some 11 to 12-ish. So
It was
quite a
supposed to
number
be
of them.
10 a.m. to
Ah,
12:15
okay. Let
West African
me.
time.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, on my okay, yeah. So that even for that 10 a.m. thing,
Yes.
we just hope a lot of them would use Google to do the conversions. But yeah, let's go on. So I do, like you saw me do, and guys, we'll jump in very soon, but all of this is necessary because I think we're all learning from each other. So mostly I would do at least a 3-day before check, a 1 week before check. I remember talking to Gideon before the program began. Quite a number of people that spoke to Gideon and together with Gideon to confirm that, oh, or Emmanuel could help with this. I was worrying them 2 weeks before today that, wait, am I going to hear from them? And they're like, okay, yeah, you will hear from them. So I think that kind of check is very necessary because of the world in which we live now. I'll get into my background very soon, but a funny thing is the idea that, or this morning I was telling my grandmom that, oh, I have a presentation in Nigeria. And then she said, oh, you better be quick. If not, you miss your flight or something. And I said, no, 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 I'm not taking a flight. I would open my computer and then I'll show up in Nigeria. And then she said, wait, how does that work? And I'm like, yeah, that's the world in which we are now. So let that form the pretext and the baseline for what we're about to get into, because that's what, bridging the gap between reality and, technology and all of that is turning into and has become now with art, with software, with hardware engineering and all of that stuff. So there's a lot that's been said about me concerning things that some of us have been working on, places we've been to, we've never been giving up, are just consistently working hard to make sure that the dream we had back in university to say, oh, I went to school to train as a mechanical engineer, but I want something different. I want something more adventurous. I want something that is more exciting, more challenging to do each and every day. So some of us took a bold step to do quite a number of things alongside what we're doing academically. Funny thing, 2006, by God's grace, I was part of the, let's say, best 2 students in the class. I don't want to say I was the best, right? Because later on, I would give up all of that and chase after computing and networking and telecoms. But yeah, I worked with Goldfields Ghana at a very early step and early age of my life. Then I discovered, okay, you know what, this whole mining thing, I'm sorry, but it's not for me. Maybe in the future I'll buy a mining company and have people run it so I can get, quite a bit of the proceeds. But I just immediately discovered that for me, it wasn't going to be about, doing one thing at the same time. At the mining company, basically, we're just dealing with fixing pumps and machines. It's quite a routine work. It's the same machines there. You are maintaining them, fixing them, taking care of them, assembling crashes, dealing with elements and issues of, what comes together for you to extract gold, put it together, melt it, put them in those shapes and sell them, whatever, purify, whatever. But it wasn't exciting enough for me. Then, of course, went into HR business, helping place people in over like so many jobs, taking in over 2,000 CVs on a very regular basis per week, going through them, sifting through them, trying to understand, what it is that people are, what they want, where they want to be placed, and the balance between where they want to go, who wants them, and why do they want them, or why they would not want them there, but at a different place. Went on to work with CFAO Motors, dealing with customers on the lines of customer service advisor, handling between about 15 to 25 pajaros per day. We're 3 people handling all of that. Like, everybody has their own quota. I think the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is that you can choose to have a very exciting life and a very challenging and a creative one at that, or respectfully, you could choose to become someone who just works 9 to 5. It's a choice. And stick with that. You go through the ranks and they pay you a certain amount of money, and your work is cut out for you. Or you can step into a world where each and every day you're creating something new, you're building something. There's always a new challenge to deal with, on a daily basis, just consistently learning new technologies, learning all kinds of things that normally you wouldn't have learned. And today we'll talk about a lot of things. One of the things we will not get into are the full detailed engineering things and all of that. But even that, at some point, I would take some time to talk about it, just so that we have a bit of an interesting scope around all of that stuff. One of the things, respectfully, the total number of people we have here is to possibly try and understand who is here, because the number is not a lot, so we could do that. Mostly I like to do that. And possibly I even like to take questions before the session begins. The idea is to use the questions as a guide at some point of the presentation as well. Of course, the content has been developed, but to take that in and ensure that each and every person in the audience is having quite a great and exciting day, and having a fair share of a good time with us, and all of that. So if you don't mind, you could punch in your questions. I would want to believe Zoom allows for anonymous questioning or chatting, so you could point them in, and I'll just really take a look at them whilst we go on. But because our number is not huge, get ready. I definitely would want to, of course, get to know those who are here at the very early stages, so that we can make the session very exciting and much more useful and tailored to the people who are here. So I'll just go on a bit with my background, and we get into more of the other expectations for the session. So, of course, from CFAO Motors, the idea was it had turned into a routine where, all we're doing was customer service advisory. But for some of us, we're working on extra time on weekends and co. We're helping customers buy new cars, helping them understand the features and functions of the cars, what they actually need because of potentially the lifestyle they have, or the amount of income they have, or where they live, or the type of roads they drive on, the family size, the jobs they do, and so on. So it became very clear that the sales department wanted me to actually join them to help sell the cars, and I was enjoying it. But HR said, no, Emmanuel, you're too young. You're too young. We're not going to allow you. So unfortunately, I gave a 30 days ultimatum. It's a funny story, but a very serious one, that if I don't get posted into sales, I'm sorry, but I'm leaving. So I wrote a letter, and unfortunately, I had to leave. The rest of the company really wanted me, but HR wasn't ready, and we had to move on. So it was from that time, in and around about 2011-ish, that for some of us, it was a full break to then say, okay, respectfully, enough with radio broadcasting for 4 years. Enough with even trying to get into TV3, because there was a client of us who enjoyed some of us our voice and said, oh, come join us at TV3. But I said, no, I want to go into software full-time. It's not been easy, but I think it's been massively rewarding jumping into the software space, because of the learnings, the experience, the exposure. And for someone like me, best of it is that whatever you do and whatever you build is usable, even if, God forbid, you're not here, as in person. Your solution still carries on with you. So assuming you transition into the other world, for those of us who believe in life after death and stuff, whatever you build right now can still be used in various countries, in various languages, in various contexts, right? And for me, that's one of the things that really gets me excited on a daily basis, to say, let's build something. Let's create something that lives way beyond us, in a way that people would still be using it, whether we are here or not, and it works. You can upgrade it, you can make it better, and so on and so forth. And of course, you can make some very, very, very good money. Today, I will not be talking about my net worth, but it's been a very exciting journey, and of course, a very rewarding one at that, in terms of what you tend to get after you've built your base and understood the fundamentals of whatever sector and space within the software development thing that you decided to go into. So that has been it. Been through quite a number of hubs around the country, and of course in other jurisdictions. Been part of a lot of accelerator programs, just learning investment preparedness programs, tech programs, pitching a number of events and winning, and all of that stuff. So it's been a very, very exciting journey going through all of that to date. My recent gig is what I think Philip shared quite recently. which is about 3 years, 9 months, you know, spent with building a financial technology that fundamentally helps people to move money around the world. And we did quite some good work. Now the company is going through some conversations with some other partners and all of that stuff, but we are moving on to building telecom solutions because we believe strongly that one of the challenges the world generally is facing, this is not just an African problem, is interconnectivity. So the ability to make people connect in a way that normally it wasn't or wouldn't have been possible before, in that there are over 900 telecommunication networks around the world who are sort of like forming gates and boundaries on something that is supposed to be as available as air, because when you and I wake up to breathe, we're not going to have to buy a voucher or swipe something before we can breathe. It's part of our innate being. I think that's what the internet has become. Access to data, access to information should become some sort of a human right at some point, that when you wake up every day, no matter who you are, where you are, as far as you have a smartphone, and probably even in the future with these type of phones or YAM phones, you should be able to access data and systems to some degree, because we've seen a very great connection between connectivity and well-being, and almost all the other SDG goals that we've seen. There is almost a component of internet connectivity that helps make it all better. When you have a very good internet connectivity, people will definitely benefit. So that is that. In this session today, more so it would be to share my experience and lessons on, of course, software development. We'll be talking about quite a number of things. I'll start sharing my slides in a jiffy on this side here. But we'll be talking about quite a number of things. One of them basically will be the idea of how to create the whole immersive experience, what goes into it, what are some of the considerations that have to be taken very, very keenly, which ones should you zoom in on, which ones should you zoom out on. We'll be talking about some success stories when it comes to VR, AR, XR, MR. There are a lot of R's. And of course, remember the reality check conversation I just started with my grandmom, wondering if I had to quickly jump to the airport to take a flight to Nigeria before I can have this presentation, and me reminding her that I don't need to. With the camera here right now, it's happening. I don't, and I didn't need necessarily to, unless it was very critical that I should be. Then, of course, we'll talk about best practices. We'll also talk about future trends and opportunities. When it comes to VR, AR, we're expecting that it's heading into the numbers of over 90 billion by about 3 to 4 years' time, and all of that. Then, of course, we'll get into the question and answers sessions or Q&A session. The slides definitely will be made available because we have quite a number of resources that you'll not be seeing. The idea is to prevent you from reading. Most of my presentations for a very long time are more pictorial than text, because the idea is to get you to listen to the presenter more and focus on what we are doing than reading from the page. But there's a lot of text behind, and we'll be taking a look at all of that as well. So without much ado, possibly still, I believe the number is not all too so great. Let me just double check with Philip and of course, Teddy Atiluku, if it's possible to have a popcorn style open mic to just really hear from possibly those who can talk. I know maybe some people right now are at places that they might not be able to speak. That is fine too. But if it is okay, I wanted to do just that quick popcorn style thing. And of course, potentially to even listen. So we'll be expecting a couple of things. Your name, what you do in terms of your major. Are you an engineer, an artist? Are you a business person? And just a quick one-liner of your expectation, just so that we can just roll in. So, Philip, Teddy,
I mean, it's great.
is
It's
it
great.
possible to do that?
It's great. Just go right ahead. Jump in. That's fine.
All right, sure. Roger that. So, if I do mention your name, if it's possible for you to speak, and please don't be shy. We want to have a very exciting time here. Just do us the honors. You can quickly on mic, introduce yourself, tell us what your major is, and give us a very quick one-line of your expectation of the session, and then we do jump in. Okay.
Sure
Abu,
thing.
Abu, if you're with us, you can on mic and tell us. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, good morning. Yes, you are, but the internet is breaking a bit.
Okay. Work.
Sorry, Abu, I personally struggled hearing you. Please, you can come again.
No, okay. I said my major is common and Sharia law.
Okay. Okay.
Common
Any
and Sharia
expectations?
law, yes.
Any expectations for today's session?
Yeah. I guess this is pretty much like a new field in the creative technical space. Having two sides of the coin, and participating or working together.
Okay.
Well, I hope to see ideas that are mind breaking as regarding creatives and technicians, so technical minds, as in think of ideas that we have not perhaps heard before, ideas that will be useful in the nearest future.
Sure. All right. Thank you so much, Abu. Thank you. We have Shidera, Sandra. Sandra, you can on mic. Just let us know your major and your expectation. Yeah, from today's session.
I hear.
Yes, I can hear you.
My major, I'm a project manager and a social entrepreneur. And my expectation from this webinar is the ability to use MR to incorporate in my work as a social entrepreneur. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
All right, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sandra. We have Daniel. Dan, you can on mic and
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, please go ahead.
Okay, hi, my name is Daniel. I'm a mechatronics student, and my expectations from today's webinar would be to see job opportunities, as it is a new field in Africa, and where the technology is headed.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dan. All right. Next, we have Imam. All right, if I pronounce that well. Please do tell us about, of course, your major and yeah, your expectation for the session.
Hello, good day. My name is Imam. I'm a game developer developing a mobile game called Izanja. It's a Nigerian game, like a verbal charade game. I'm expecting or interested in seeing how I can integrate VR into my game, and I would like to see how that works.
Okay. All right. Sure. Okay, we have Frederick. Thank you so much, Imam. Frederick, over to you. Your major and your expectation.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Frederick. I'm a mechatronics student, and my expectation is also to look for job opportunities back in Nigeria.
Okay. All right. Sure. All right. Thank you. All right. The next one is Grace. Grace, if you can hear us, you can unmute. Let's know what your major is and your expectation. Okay. So I'm guessing, Grace, you're not available to speak. We'll move on to Joyce. Grace, when you're available, we definitely would hand the mic over to you. Joyce, by all means, please do unmute.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Joyce. I'm a co-founder with Habit. So my expectations are that we'll learn what we learn today, we'll be able to incorporate it more into our practice. Thank you.
All right, sure. Thank you so much. We have Oluwapelumi. If you can hear us, you can unmute. Let us know what your major is and what your expectation is for today's session.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, my name is Ikotunlu Apelumi. I work in the school. I work with kids. I'm a school admin. So my expectation with this is to learn how to incorporate more technology with children and getting them know how to get involved with tech and arts. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And we have Sadiq. If you can hear us, please unmute. Let us know what your major is and your expectation.
Good morning, sir. My name is Abubakar Sadiq Mustafa. I am a petroleum geologist and a multimedia storyteller. I have a project where I want to integrate multimedia storytelling and virtual reality to preserve geological records that are actually threatened by climate change induced floods in Nigerian sedimentary basins, and also see how geologists can map these basins remotely, because geologists have actually been kidnapped during field works across northern Nigeria. So that's why I'm here, and I hope to learn how the virtual reality actually works.
All right, sure. Thank you so much, Sadiq. Tai, if you can hear me, please you can unmute and let us know what your major is and your expectation for today's session.
I can hear me.
Yes, please, loud and clear.
Okay, my name is Tayo Job, and I'm an eco-artist and artistic researcher and writer. My reason for being here is to see how I can integrate virtual reality together with my artistic practice.
Sorry, together with
my artistic practice.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Let me see, whom have I not called? Atiwa Lola. If you can hear me, I'm curious to know what your major is and of course your expectation.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tiwalola Folabi, and I'm a software engineer. So my expectation for this workshop is to learn more about augmented reality and VR, and how it's being integrated into the creative space here. So that's my expectation, I guess.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Tiwalola. So we have someone, I'm not sure if I call the person, I think the person comes by the name Infinix X6525. Obviously that's not the name of a person. I think it's the name of a device. But Infinix, if you can hear us, please let us know your actual name and what your expectation for this session will be.
So good morning.
Good morning,
everyone. My name is Salamat, for a way to join the meeting because I don't know what device there's Infinix. So yes, so I'm a writer and a book reviewer, and I look forward to seeing how the whole process of today's conversation is going to change how I view things creatively, especially with my writing, how I can make how I can bring visual reality into what I do. So I look forward to an interesting conversation. Yeah.
All right, sure. Thank you so much. And of course, yeah, this really helps me. I'm very grateful. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to unmute to let us know who you are, and of course, to understand what your expectation is. This gives me a very strong baseline to know when we get to some of the parts where I could hammer more on the issues. And of course, for some of them, I will probably come with a disclaimer quickly. We had mentioned that before, but I'll just go over it again. There are a few people who are looking forward to somehow getting into the details of how to build the whole VR thing and all. Today's session may not necessarily be that. We'll talk about a few things in terms of what to consider and all of that. But today's session is not necessarily an engineering thing where we'll be bringing up Unity and bringing up all the other components or Unreal Engine to build a world or build a 3D model from either Cinema 4D or Blender and inject into the world and position, color, program them with C or C++ or whatnot. We also may not and potentially will not be going into the details of, for example, how to build a whole payment platform behind your systems from whatever model of how you want to make your money with or for or from. We will also go into database setups and all those technical things. We want, the idea is today's session is really more of what I had mentioned before, and I'll go over it again briefly. And of course, the slides will start rolling in. Fundamentally, we'll be looking into understanding the whole idea of immersive technologies. We'll try and spend about 10 minutes on that. We'll go into the whole components of things you need to consider in creating an immersive experience. And then we'll go into showcasing successful stories or projects in the space. And I think that we'll spend a lot of time there. We'll also go into best practices, and then we talk about future trends and quite a number of opportunities and how the opportunities are segmented in various areas for us to consider. There's quite a trend in the requests concerning being able to have a job or get to work within the VR space. So when we get into those areas, we'll talk about that. We'll get into the Q&A session for those who maybe the session didn't address certain specific areas and they have questions. You can ask a question in context of what has been presented, and then we'll see what we can do. Of course, at any point in time, please feel free. My presentations mostly are very flexible. I like to keep it very lively. It shouldn't be that I am just the only one presenting. If at any point in time I said something or I mentioned something that you somehow felt you want to add something, please feel free. Raise your hands. We will definitely pass the mic to you because I like to keep it very lively. Knowledge is not in the hands of only one person. So I keep that at a very deep level of all my presentations and when I do lecture at a lot of other places. Okay, so without much ado, let me bring this in here and commence a sequence of attempting to share my screen. Let me come here. I believe that at some point I might have to turn off my video, but let's see how that one goes. So let me start from here. We've spoken quite a lot about a number of that. Let me come back and bring my Zoom to the other screen and let me share my screen. Okay, so I'll be picking it from desktop 2 on my left and share. All right, there we go. There we go. Okay, so I think we're good now. I just want to be sure. Just to confirm, I hope we can all see the screen that we are definitely sharing right now, just so that we know everybody can see it. Okay. All right, cool. If you can't, let us know, and then maybe I'll reshare or whatever, but I would only believe everybody can see my screen now. All right, so we spent quite a good time, of course, talking about ourselves. I've given just a little bit of a history about where some of us came from and why we've landed in the space that we find ourselves in right now. I've also gone over elements of the expectations with how the presentation would be going. So without much ado, we definitely would be jumping in and we'll continue thereof. The time is, of course, in Ghana here, it is 50 minutes past 09. So roughly in, Philip, just to confirm that, Philip Joyce, just to confirm that we are working within time.
Yes,
when are we supposed to bring the session to an end? Is it in 1 hour time or 2 hours time?
It would be in another hour time, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, sure. Copy that. So we'll try and make all of this fit in 1 hour. So I'll be very mindful of the time. Excitingly, sorry guys, but there is just so much to share with us here that it gives me a lot of joy, but also the time is very small. So please do forgive me if at some point you feel like I am rushing through the content or talking too fast. But if I'm talking too fast, please slow me down. I have the propensity to sometimes do that. My nickname is Speed anyway. It stems all the way back from junior high and senior high. So I probably tend to do things fast, including developments and launching products and all that. So if I'm speaking fast here, please somebody tap my shoulder through the chat and just say, Emmanuel, please slow down. And I assure you, I would take note and slow down. All right, let's do this. So today we fundamentally will be talking about the whole idea of understanding immersive technologies. Of course, in the very slide that you see, quite a number of the other icons look similar because they somewhat all play into the same area. AR with itself, which is augmented reality, is fundamentally you overlaying digital content on the real world using devices like a smartphone or an AR glass or some sort of a hardware which is enhancing the real world experience with your digital elements. So we'll go into that. But the idea of why I even want to talk about AR first is that I think that by way of context and of course by way of the space in which we are, especially as Africans, or more so within the African context, based on income levels and what people can afford and what people can pay for or not pay for, it's way more easier building an AR technology. People can play with it almost now immediately because the hardware is almost immediately available. There is also the question and the context around, it's possible to do VR as well, even through smartphones, but the experience is way different if you're doing it with a headset, like a proper VR headset. And we potentially might get to see some of that. I would try, if the time is good on our side, that would go into seeing some of the samples or examples out there. If we are not able to do that, don't worry at all. I prepared this in a way that it looks more like a lecture with a whole notes and handouts with it, so that assuming we don't meet our timelines or we're unable to go into details, there's a whole huge pamphlets available that we can add you to. And the idea is I like to share a continual improvement type of document where whatever you receive is not just a 1-hour PDF, but continuously, whatever experience I am going through and learning, I publish it there so that whenever you check it, you also see an update of it as well. I shared that with Philip earlier, way before preparing my PowerPoint presentation. So that I do hope that per the policies of CAVIC, we should be able to share with you as well. So we'll do that. But back to the whole element of what is VR, what is AR, what is MR, what is XR. So we've talked about AR, augmented reality. Potentially, again, we'll try and see if we can get some examples so that we know exactly what it is. So we don't do too much theory here. And then we've mentioned briefly what VR is in terms of its context of definition, where the user is completely immersed into a virtual world. In most cases, they don't get to see the actual world they are in. They are looking at a whole different world, as opposed to what you see with AR, where you're seeing the world in which you are right now. You're seeing the table, surface, and all. But if you do point your camera to it, or your phone camera to it, or the AR headset or glass, something projects based on what you have programmed into your software, whether you're using Vuforia or whatever it is. Of course, all these resources will be shared with you in terms of for those of us who want to build it, for you to consider what to put together to do that, and it will be a continuous process of improvement. We also have MR, which is a mixed reality, which fundamentally will be explained as a blend of a physical world or the physical and digital world, enabling interaction with both in real time. So fundamentally, you could then have an experience where it's no more just you jumping into a virtual world, but this time it's actually the virtual world and the real world sort of working together with all of that. The very moment we get into the extended reality zone, we're entering into a zone where all the five senses of the human species or the human being, you know, could be brought into the program. So fundamentally, human beings can see, obviously. A few of us, unfortunately, do not have sight, or we can smell. So your eye, your nostrils, your ears, you can hear, your tongue, you can taste something, of which we are not there yet in terms of the tech, but some people are working on that. We'll not be talking about that though. And then of course, touch, tactiles. So we have hardware that you could actually add to whatever headset or code you would have written. And of course, the developer can actually program that into the context of the software so that when you get into a certain surface within the world, based on the texture that was added to the said 3D object in either your Unity or Unreal Engine or whatever 3D world modeling software you use, you could bring that texture into code. So if it's smooth, when I pass my hand in the virtual world on that, the feel on that is what gets transmitted to me. In terms of engineering and in terms of how all of this is put together, you could have other senses which are a combinatory set of your human senses. So for example, when the wind blows, quite a number of things are used on our system as human beings to be able to detect it. It could be that you heard the wind. It could be that you smelled the wind. It could be that you felt the touch by way of pressure. So in some of the context of extended reality development, we actually have a whole context of either a multi-directional, you know, treadmill walker, where you can go in multi-directions. And the idea is that you'll be walking or running or moving, but fundamentally, you are actually on a device that allows you to go in multiple directions. But of course, there are funds within the space, you know, and all of that to help give you that extended experience, you know, for you to sort of experience what the developer wanted you to feel, you know, by extension. So even if it's like rainfall within the program, then you should be able to feel some sort of a sprinkler within the space that comes in. This level of technology potentially are used somewhat in the military or in some specific areas for therapeutic treatments where people might want to give somebody who might have lost certain senses a way to reprogram their minds or to reprogram their brains on how to perceive those sort of sensations and all of that stuff. Of course, in the area of, say, augmented reality or virtual reality, those are quite popular because the extensions to interaction are quite limited. So it's easy to program for those ones. It's also quite faster to do that because you're not dealing with too many actuators or sensors or robotic components that have to translate code into a real-world experience for your body to feel in the way that the developer intended to. When we get into virtual reality headsets, of course, and I'm not going to spend too much time about this. I think that for us to talk about this, it would even have been better if we took a look at it and basically said, let's see how and what it looks like. So I'll see if I can pull a few images onto the screen as we go ahead with our conversation. But basically, the common features that the VR set has is a headset, a display screen. They have a Fresnel lens. Normally, we would have expected a lens to be potentially very big, like maybe what you see here and all of that, but they have ways of getting them in there so that it's flat, but it gets the job done to give you the depth and the perspective that your eye can perceive. We won't talk so much about that. Quite a number of the other headsets also have things like gyroscopes and accelerometers, and all of those sort of other sensors that could perceive distance, and all of that stuff. So, you know, depending on the manufacturer, you could have all of those things in there as well. Then, of course, we have some other manufacturers who have extended features with, you know, the particular headset that they've developed for a VR. So you could have elements of a microphone where the person can hear, within like what's going on within the world. In some cases, there are cameras to also help do a 3D modeling and drafting in cases where it is actually needed to help give a signal to you that you're either approaching an object, so be careful. The earlier versions of some of the VR headsets that were developed didn't have some of these features. So you could see some, I would call them funny videos on YouTube where people have put on VR headsets and they are walking into walls, they are walking into objects without even the software perceiving or being able to warn them that they are walking into danger and stuff like that. So these are things that when we potentially maybe in the future get into the actual development of it, the software developer would have to pay attention to ensure that if it's being developed, regardless whether it's going to be for kids or for adults or for certain people with certain disabilities, that all of that context has been sort of like considered. And of course, when we get into creating the immersive experience, we would potentially talk about some of the things that have to be considered so that it's sort of holistic, regardless of who is putting on the headset. The system is able to really deal with their senses and give them the appropriate warnings so that they don't injure themselves or get into something they are not supposed to. Some of the variations we could have are that you could have a VR set which is tethered or a standalone VR. There have been all kinds of conversations and discussions around what a VR set should really look like. Some of the developers or designers of these or engineers of these headsets believe that it should not be connected to a PC, so you can move around. Some are also connected to a PC. There are elements of battery life. It's one of the major issues with headsets. So for those of us who would ever be developing for VR headsets, similar to mobile devices, when you're building an app, you need to pay attention to consumption of battery, if there are going to be services on the background and whatnot. So you have to actually pay attention to ensure that all of that is taken into consideration, because the VR headsets are not necessarily going to give you a battery life for the whole day. It's not going to happen. Never. If it would, then it's tethered to maybe a power bank or some computing device which has its own power to supply the VR. Then we have an open and closed type of design where some VR sets have a closed design that completely blocks out external light, every type of external light for a more immersive experience. And then others have an open design that allows some external light, making them lighter and more compatible for extended wear and stuff like that. Of course, when we get into the whole element of VR, like if you wanted to see a VR headset or you wanted to know how it looks like, the quick search you could use is VR headset, or you could just Google for PlayStation VR or HTC Vive. We also have the Valve Index. We have the Meta Quest. We have Meta Quest 1 and Meta Quest 2. And the idea is that you can quickly Google this and start seeing results to see exactly how they look like. I would want to believe each and every one of us have at least seen it before, that you could quickly do that search and see it. Then we have the idea that we have a lot of manufacturers that are going into, like 3D, sort of like 3D, 360-degree type of, design or product view, even on a website. So allowing you to experience a virtual world on a device and all that. I hope we are looking at those who want to enter the room so that I don't have to do that. All right, thanks. So of course we have also quite a number of things in relating to YouTube videos showcasing VR gameplays and reviews. So you can also take a look at those ones. That gives you a very interesting perspective of how that looks like. In the augmented reality space, it's not, again, like I said before, it's way easier and faster. I mean, when I look at the development life cycles of the VR, MR, not to talk of the XR, but augmented reality is way easier because you could pick your device and quickly write a code in Unity and deploy in matters of now within the next 1 hour to 2 hours. If you know exactly what you're doing, you should have your app up and running, all too so easy. And all of that. If you search online for the project some of us use in winning quite a few awards here and there, to some extent, I would say it's been not necessarily archived, but there are quite a number of things we need to work on before we can actually bring it to life. You can search for Wannell Sizer. Just spell recycle now, backwards, recycle now. So we built a very simple AR project that allows you to know the value of plastic in real time so that you can submit it to the nearest collector and then you'll be paid for it. So that's what we spent the time doing, and that's what got us quite a number of awards and recognition with the World Bank and UNICEF and British Council and so on and so forth. So one of the things we'll talk about when we get into the whole idea of creating immersive experiences is that you want to be very interested in the whole idea of what you're trying to build. Is it a painkiller or a vitamin? So have that at the back of your mind. We'll get there and talk about that pretty soon. Let's quickly jump into the whole idea of our mixed reality. So in mixed reality, the headsets are quite similar to VR. And this is why I spend so much time talking about the whole VR thing, because almost everything I mentioned there would by extension be connected to the MR XR experience. And when you get to the XR, just start adding sensories and more sort of things that gives you the impression on all your senses or some senses for you as a person or as a human being or for your users and what they have to go through within the program or the artwork or the game or the simulation you would have built into that virtual reality world. So I won't potentially go on to talk so much about the MR headset yet, but they're fundamentally just all too close and same with what you would have felt on the VR side of things. And of course, they are very, very close and all of that stuff. In a number of cases, you would come to experience that the computation power for what you would have experienced in an MR is way higher. You know, if you compare to what you would have felt in a virtual reality or a VR headset scenario, because then at the MR level, you're dealing with trying to add a bit of the real world experience into whatever virtual world experience that you have built so that the user can deal with both sort of scenarios. So some of the manufacturers or quite a number of the manufacturers for MR are really key on being able to have quality cameras, magnetometers, very good accelerometers and gyroscopes that actually helps project. And some even have a sort of like a ladder or a LiDAR technology that allows you to project the real world into your virtual world by way of just like really sending that beam, recording the feedback from that beam, and projecting the 3D world into your virtual real world to say, I'm in a room right now, there's a screen here, there's a screen there, there's another screen there, there's a wall there. It hits that, it brings the feedback back so I can put it into the real world and deal with it. So just by way of that extension, and the number of senses and the sensations you would have wanted to create in the MR space definitely will require a lot of computation power compared to the others. We have elements of the HoloLens style, we have the Google style, and all of that stuff as well. Again, a lot of content will be available in the materials we'll be sharing with you thereon. We'll be moving on to the creating immersive experience. So in creating the immersive experience, today we have the whole idea of artificial intelligence, AI, which there are just so many facets to it. You can generate images, you can generate text, you know, deepfakes, audio, video, and all kinds of content from it. But I think what really makes it interesting for those of us who will be going to the VR and AR spaces, the whole idea of the artistic nature of human beings that to some degree, in a very high level debate, artificial intelligence will not be able to compete. When we say they will not be able to compete, we are talking about design and development that really somewhat adds up and makes sense to the human experience in a way that we can really relate to it. We human beings have lived through various levels of anthropology and social studies and social lives and all. It's going to take quite a while, respectfully, for an AI technology to get to the point of what we are terming as probably the singularity, you know, where if you pick any single AI tool, it understands everything that one average human being in terms of intelligence or IQ understands based on all their life experience, you know, to be able to answer and deal with everything to a point that they can drive a car, they can cook, they can design, they can build this your AR virtual reality thing. Some of us are betting it's a very long way off. Some are predicting it will be around 2050. I don't know. Maybe it will be earlier, maybe it will be longer. But I think because of how the human brain works and how we tend to do our things, there would always be that differentiator between you, the artist, what you want to actually create and put out there, as opposed to if we're able to hand all the tools to an AI to do and build a whole set of solutions. There is the whole interesting debate and exciting, I think it's a very exciting one at that, when you look at software development and artificial intelligence and what is happening now, where people are saying, no matter how good you write your AI tool to build a software, it will never be able to match an advanced developer who has the experience of, say, over 20, 30 years, or even 10 years, or even 8 years, because then that's a human being interfacing with a problem. And we tend to think in a lot of ways that regardless of how best the neural network is, there's going to be a gap. So be well rest assured that in your quest to jump into the artistic nature of solving problems with either VR, XR, MR, and all the other R's that will be following, you're going to have a very huge market space or a very interesting space to work with without not too much fear at all, because some of us are betting it's not an area that an AI can take over almost immediately. So in a session of talking about creating immersive experience and all, we'll be talking about design principles. We'll talk about development tools and platforms and what you can put together to be able to do this. Again, please be mindful that our time is short, so I might not be able to go into the details. How do you download this? How do you set it up? Where do you get the licenses from? It is my hope and belief that maybe somehow Philip, the Joyces, and all the other co-founders and supporters at Kavik will put their money together. Fly me to Nigeria. Let's do this. Part commit intended, but I know that would happen.
I think that will be happening very soon, really.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
so we can go into
no
the details.
Pun intended as well.
Sure. Very well. So we will not dive too much into the development tools and platforms, but we'll try and talk about them and also try and share the knowledge of what basics are required. Because I think in most of these presentations, like I had said before, I try to gauge the level of expectation and the people in the room before the presentation so that we know exactly what to deal with. But I would also be interested in mentioning some of the basics that have to be dealt with so that if you were to jump into this, you know exactly whom to talk with, whom to collaborate with, and what you yourself, whether you're a business person, an artist, a writer, a publisher, an admin, a software person, a network engineer person, what you should sort of like try and be zooming in on so that you can be useful in the team. And assuming you were to bid for an equity, you would have a very good share of equity with whatever team and collaborative efforts that you are all bringing together. We'll also talk about a very interesting part of things that I never leave out in almost any of my software or tech or finance presentations, anywhere, everywhere, is business model canvassing. Very, very important to me, because I think that Africa as a whole and the way and where we found ourselves has different set of problems when you compare to Silicon Valley, or when you compare it to the other valleys in UK or the other valleys in Southern America and all the other places in the Middle East and so on. It's a very different world. So we definitely have to pay attention to that. So we'll spend a very good time on the business model canvas, and that's what we'll be treating next before we even get into the idea of the design principles and all of that. So let's run into that. All right. So when we talk about the whole idea of your business model canvas, and I'll try and be fast about it. I'll run through it very quickly because we don't have the time, but I'll also try and make sure that I'm driving at all the 9 segments because it's very necessary. Earlier, I mentioned that whatever you're trying to build, regardless of whatever it is, whether it's in software space, transportation, real estate, finance, travel and tour, health, agro, just name it, arts, education, whatever, it's very important to not disregard the business model canvas, but hold it in high esteem, because it's where you will do almost everything that you're about to do with whatever you're about to build. And I have always been interested in the idea that regardless of how powerful your passion is, it has to be balanced with profits, because your passion unfortunately may not necessarily pay the bills. You can show up at the electricity provider and say, oh, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, give me electricity. Or you can show up at the mall and say, oh, I ran out of stock on my groceries, I'm very passionate, so please give me some stuff and my passion will pay for it. We really have to balance it. So when we get to the part of monetization and all, we also spend time talking about it. But before all of that, it's always necessary to pay attention to the parts we're about to talk about. And fundamentally, it's in the areas of what is your unique selling proposition or your value proposition for what it is you're trying to build. What value does what you're trying to build bring to your customers? Is it a painkiller or is it some vitamin? And let me just talk about that briefly. So in quite a number of cases, we have things that we want to build. We either had a dream, a vision, or some sort of a feel that something needs to be worked on, something needs to be built, and we need to develop it. We are thinking about it and all of that stuff. It comes down to just two things, fundamentally. Is it a painkiller or is it a vitamin? Painkillers, if you don't have it, you're in trouble. You're disoriented, you're in pain, you just want it. You want it now, quick, so that you can be relieved. Vitamins, you and I, we don't necessarily always need to take vitamins. So you can be there and you never took a multivitamin or a food supplement, and you'll be okay. You'll be fine. Nothing would really happen to you. You live a very normal life. But we also have instances where some vitamins would have turned into a painkiller, depending on the context of what it is that you are dealing with, or whatever, in quote, ailment or pain or associated expected addition to yourself that you're expecting. Your vitamin can turn into a painkiller, and we'll talk about that as we go into it. So your value proposition or your unique selling point is very, very key. What value are you offering to your customers? Which one of your customer problems are you focusing on solving? Because there are just so many problems to be solved out there. Then, of course, what bundle of products and services are you offering to each customer segment? And that's also very, very key, because you basically need to zoom into the idea that who and whom exactly are you building for? And it's very, very important. You can't just start building because you want to build. You need to identify, like, whom am I building this for? Is it for kids? Is it for adults? Is it for people who are educated or less educated? Is it for people who have a certain type of lifestyle? You need to have identified that. Then, of course, you need to get into the whole idea of what is the relationship you'll be having with these, your customers? How are you going to be helping them find you? And how are you going to find them? How are they going to talk to you? How are you going to talk to them? And there are so many levels and layers of things that you would have to consider in that regard. Depending on the type of business you're doing, obviously nowadays you are targeting elements of your social media setup, your website, which is by default, you need to have it. You would have to have considered, are you going to do billboard ads? Are you going to do radio ads or TV ads? And all of that stuff. And of course, all the other platforms that are medium for you to communicate to your customers and potentially your customers to communicate back to you. So that's very, very key. Then the channels. So after you've been able to talk to your customers, now you know your customers in the customer segmentation area, you have a very good and fair idea about what type of relationship you want to have with them. And of course, again, just briefly back to the relationship part. If they were even to come to your office or they wanted to find you, how would they interact with you? Whether it's in the physical world or it's in the digital space. If they entered your building, how does all of that look like? You need to have sort of like anticipated and thought about all of that stuff. But when you've done all of that, and now the customer is hooked or sold, and they're like, oh, I want this. How are they going to get it? So we get into the whole idea of your customer segmentation in this area, so that you can then look through, okay, how do I serve my product to them? What are the markets that are there for me to give it to them? Are they going to download something from my website to use the solution? Or are they going to download it from Google Play Store, the Apple Store, or whatever market is available, for them to be able to experience this? And that's very, very key for you to look at, so that you then get to see exactly what the next activities are going to be for you, because all of this pans into the idea of what your key activities are going to be. So you need to have identified what your key activities are going to be as far as your value proposition is concerned. And of course, the channels that you're going to serve and then the relationship you're going to have with them. And of course, very important, we'll get to that very soon, your revenue streams, how you're going to make money off of all of this. Very, very, very important. So you definitely should have thought about all of that. And then that brings you to the idea of listing your key activities to then say, these are the activities I want to do, so that I am ready to sell the value proposition. I know who the customers are. I have a very clear idea on the relationships I want to have with them. I also have a very clear idea on the channels and the places that would serve the product to them. And of course, to give me feedback back to the customer relationship channel. So you list all of that activities down. The very moment you are done with that key activities part of things, I wish I had a pointer, because I realized my mouse, I hope my mouse is showing clearly though. But the idea is that when you know your key activities now, you then know what type of resources you have to put together to be able to make sure that you can deliver on at least your early stage of MVP for your value proposition or your USP. Now, a quick tip here that I want to share with us is that in the space of where we operate, when I say where we operate, in the software space and the hardware space, it's very important to always remember that it's easier asking for resources than money. So do keep that in mind. You will get more support when you are specific with the resource you want than asking for money. Please never forget this one, because you make more progress asking for partners and people for the resource than say, give me maybe 100,000 Naira or 2,000 cedis or $5,000 or whatever it is. It's difficult to get the money. But if you ask for the resource, there's almost, from my experience and the experience of a host of people within my space who are really rising up, it's easier. Focus on the resource. So please never forget this. It's key. And that's why I'm emphasizing it, so that you can move faster. All right. Now, when you have all of this, the next thing you are looking for is almost immediately a link to what I just mentioned. Who are the partners that can actually help you get the resources that you need to be able to build this? Do you need a VR set? Do you need a new laptop with a high computation power to be able to render whatever it is that you are trying to build, which is very key? Do you need access to a render farm to be able to process the things that you've built, whether it's a video, whether it's a 3D model, whether it's some design, which will take time to render and all of that stuff? Do you need access to payment gateways or certain servers on AWS or GCP? You need to start listing all of those partners down. Key suppliers, if there's any supplier that will be giving you something for the work that you do, whether it's a digital component or a physical component, you need to definitely pay attention and make sure you are listing them down so you can approach them. One other very interesting tip about partnership is that it doesn't always have to be a bloody fight where you're trying to win all the cards. By all means, be ready. You're going to lose some of the cards. It's okay. It's okay, because that's how the business space is. You can't share a contract with me, say I should be your partner, but there's nothing in for me. It doesn't work. So at some point, when you're approaching some of these partners and say, okay, this is what I want, they will give you certain terms that at some point you need to find a compromise between, okay, they're giving me, say, $300,000 worth of AWS or GCP worth of server access or space to use, but they're asking for maybe 2% equity, or they are saying that after this ends, I have to commit to certain payments, or I have to commit to a certain program that they are running. You need to have that trade-off so that you're ready for it. It's more of a 50-50 thing. So please be very open-minded when you get to the partnership space, when it comes to that conversation of who your key partners are and the sort of terms and conditions that you'll be met with. And of course, by all means, one other key thing to really note, just by the way, in terms of partnership, is that please don't get too excited with those offers that are thrown to you, that you don't read the nitty-gritties of the law. It's very, very important. It has almost always come back to bite founders and creators later on in life. You know, that % of the profits, and you give 10 to charity. I'm sorry, but I'm laughing, but yeah, that could actually be written. If you didn't read it, no matter how wealthy or how good your solution becomes, that's what you signed to. You didn't read the fine print. So that's what happens to you. But it's just one of those instances. There are a lot of other very sensitive things in there, including but not limited to ideas of you can't have other partners, or you can't expand in certain countries because they are not there, and so on. Please read it. Be sure what you are getting yourself into. And that's very, very key. In all of this, it then almost quickly, immediately links to the idea of cost structure. So what are the cost components of all the things that you've already dealt with by far? by way of you wanting to offer a certain value proposition or a unique selling point. Your customer relationships, they are not cheap. They don't come easy. To get popular on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram, it comes with, you have to throw in some bit of money so that the algorithm can push you. Factor all of those costs, elements of advertisements and all of that stuff. The channels, they are not free. To be able to put your apps out there, whether it's any of the markets, it's not free. Quite a good number of the ones where the customers are, there is almost some cost element that comes with it. So please do pay attention and have all those costs listed. Your customer segmentation sometimes will require you actually doing research. Research is not free. Sometimes it will come at a cost. So do factor all of that in. But in all of this, as a business person, you're also looking at the idea of your resources, all the resources that you have to have dealt with, and the other activities you have to have dealt with, that you have factored all of that into your costs and broken it down into elements of fixed assets or fixed costs or continual costs or things that are one-time costs and so on. You need to have identified all of them. What that also basically means is that you definitely would end up working in a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet. It may be you, or it may be your co-founder or some other person in the team, but that will be very key to ensure that you guys have your eyes on all the pieces that you're going to be dealing with, and you're not just focusing on just the tech or just the research or just the 3D modeling. And then by the time you are done, it's a really way far part of the bigger picture of what you really need to do. And it just sits on your laptop. It never gets to be launched because all the other pieces were not looked at and there's cost waiting. And of course, now you figured out the cost. Now, the very moment you know how much it's costing you to be able to do all of this, it's now very easy for you to know or be able to calculate that, okay, this is how my revenue model is going to be like. Because for me to be able to turn a profit and keep running the service, so people can always put on their VR headsets and experience the world I have built or the art I have built or whatever it is, this is how much it's costing me. So you, the user, you can have this portion for free, and maybe you get other features later on, or that you subscribe to my services before you can use it. You can use it for a freemium for maybe 15 days. And then after that, when you come back, based on your credentials, it doesn't work for you anymore. You have to pay something with your credit card or debit card to be able to do that. And we'll talk about that when we get into the part of the monetization and what to sort of pay attention to when it comes to the metrics and revenue and all of that stuff. So revenue is key. Don't lose track of that. So when you get to that part, try and really pay attention to how much it costs you. Be able to draft a way to spread the cost and say, this is how much the customer is paying, so you can turn a profit, and it's very key. All right, cool. So without much ado, I'll move on to the next slide. It's quite a blank slide, so I'll try and run through very quickly. So in terms of design principles, and I'm going to do my best not to sound very, very boring here. I think based on the total number of people or not to overspend time here at all. Again, the content will be available for the software people, the mechatronics and the engineers, so they can take a look at it more and read more about elements of, and I'm going to go through them now, the solid principles, which is a single responsibility principle type of a thing, where whatever you are building, each software model should have a set of code easier to understand and maintain and so on. And then we have the open and close principle, which basically the software entities, the class and the models, should be open for extension, but closed for modification. And this allows you to add new functionalities without changing existing code. Then we have the Liskov substitution principle, which is basically subtypes, should be substitutable, or for their base types without altering the program's correctness or its proper workings. And this ensures consistency and reliability in your code base. Then we have the interface segregation and principles. So the idea is that the client should not be forced to depend on methods that they do not use. Break large interfaces into smaller ones, and then be more specific and more specific, so that if there's something we have to fix, there's a very specific place to go to deal with the problem. Then we have the whole idea of dependency injection principles, where we have high-level models that should not depend on low-level models, and both should depend on abstractions, pure abstractions. Again, I know these terms are new to a lot of us here. Please don't be intimidated by it whatsoever at all, because we all learned it and all of that stuff. So the whole abstraction thing should not depend on details, because it's not fully done. We just continuously building. and the details should depend on abstractions itself. And you have to promote loose coupling so that you can keep moving on. Then we have other very common principles, more common principles with do not repeat yourself. So if you're going to build a model, whether it's in the VR, AR space, all of them fundamentally comes down into hardware and software. But the idea is that you don't want to be repeating yourself. So if there is something you're seeing as a commonality, even in the 3D models, and based on the number of polygons or how it's been built, you want to have taken into consideration the idea that you could externalize those components and probably focus on that so that it can be reused in a lot of other 3D contexts. Then when you get into the software space as well, you're not repeating yourself. If you have to extract a method or write a certain specific class to do something, that is what you do so that it's all modular. If you need to fix something, you just go there. And when you fix that, it fixes everything. Then we have the KISS. Don't get all kinds of funny ideas, but it basically says, keep it simple. And they have a word with it. You could term it as stupid or then backed, but the idea is that strive for simplicity. Keep your code and your designs very, very as simple as possible. By way of saying simple with your designs, we don't mean don't do whatever complicated world that you want to model. That one is up to you. But when it comes to the idea of how all the pieces come together, make sure you are keeping a very simplistic sort of way that things connect to each other so that it's not just you who understands what has been built. When we bring any other engineer or any other team member in the space, they can also understand what it is that you've been able to put together. And there's this thing about Yagni. So Yagni is you aren't going to need it anyway. So do not implement features or functionalities that you do not currently need. And one thing we need to also remember is the idea that in the software space and even hardware space, there should be a very clear difference between features, functionality, and benefits. In almost all the case, your feature is going to lead to a benefit. So keep a very clear line between that. You as the engineer or the developer or you, the founding team, would have thought about, oh, we are building this feature, we're doing this, we'll do that, we'll do that. In the end, the customer doesn't care. All they care about is they're like, okay, so with all of this that you did, what is the benefit that I get as a customer? What do I get from this? So is it the experience? Is this something that takes me into another world or gives me certain enhancement in the game or feature or being able to view or go into and jump? We might term those things as teleportation. So jumping from one place to another, focus on what is needed to bring the benefit. And then we have separation of concerns, loose coupling, which I mentioned before, testability. Very interesting that you need to make sure there are no funny surprises, which is unexpected in whatever it is that you're trying to build. It's very, very key. Is what to expect. If there's going to be any surprise, it should be some element, especially in games, it's going to extend to the element of gamification theory, where you're basically saying, maybe because I want to grow my user base, there is a surprise. If you play to this level, or you watch the art extensively to this level, or you explore to a certain level, then a certain feature opens for you. So those surprises you can keep in there. People who have discovered them will talk about it on social media or blog about it, and it will drive traffic to whatever thing that you have built for them to wanting to experience it. And for those who are already experiencing your technology, they would want to use it more because now they've heard about a surprise that you have in there. So keep a very clear line between that. The bad expectations are that I put on the VR headset or I picked my AR device and I was expecting that it would render a house. It rendered an apple. No, that's not good. So those type of expectations, please try and avoid it. If you do proper testing, regression testing and stuff with your products, those things would never happen. And of course, at some point back to the course of a business model canvas, you definitely would have had to have engaged sometimes VR users and do a user acceptance test, a UAT, to be sure that whatever you've built, people have experienced it, they've taken a look at it, and they're like, oh yeah, we like this, we don't like this, change this. This one, the color was too sharp, the texture wasn't okay, the sound was too rough or whatnot, and do all of that and make sure you are correcting the process before you launch it. Then we have the modular design, where the principle focuses on breaking down a program into smaller chunks and independent and reusable models. where, this improves the code organization, maintainability, usability, testing, and all kinds of things, including but not limited to security and all of that stuff. The other things that you also have to pay attention to, and I'll be wrapping up to move on to the next slide, is that you definitely have to pay attention to maintainability, which is very, very key. Whatever you build today, tomorrow may not necessarily be working. And the idea is that it's not your fault. It also may not be the fault of your key manufacturer or the market or the ecosystem that you tend to have built for. Something just happened. There's an improvement in technology from some lens designer or some engineer somewhere who has built a new way of perceiving colors or smells and all of that. They brought a new APK or some sort of a library out. And yeah, you want to take advantage of that. If your code is not maintainable, it'll be very difficult. Or if the model or the word that you've modeled is not easy to maintain, then it's very, very difficult to access that. Of course, in the 3D space, concepts around your idea of total number of polygons, total number of lines and spaces and surfaces that you applied to be able to get the results that you needed should all be taken a look at, because it would all go a long way to affect the idea that even if you're able to maintain, how do you render? Will it take you so much of a long time to render the content to be able to share with people in the product that you've developed? Then there's element of scalability, reliability, reusability, and secureness or security of your product. And of course, the usability and efficiency. I could go on about this on like a 2, 4 hour, 5 hour, 10 hour talk, because it's all necessary, element of scalability. So whatever you are building, if people have to be, for example, making payments, you should have been able to anticipate and use certain technologies that allows you such that it doesn't become the real world case scenario where somehow, and I'm going to use any random brand, but maybe in the food space. So a certain, of course, they didn't pay Kavik for an advert, so I won't mention any brand's name, but a certain food vendor is serving people with, a certain amount of chicken and drinks. And the idea is that you're going to have a queue. People, they want that service, so they are queuing up. In the real world, people get pissed off when the queue is now about the 40th, 50th person. They start losing hope and they leave. They walk away. That's what it is. In technology, you don't want to have that. You want to make it such that even if 5,000 people showed up, 70,000 people, 1 million people showed up all of a sudden at your technology, they should all be able to buy the chicken and the drink at the same time, and the system shouldn't collapse. So again, if we were to go into this, you'd realize there are a lot of things we need to talk about and look into, i.e. in the design space, in the software space, so that your system never breaks down. Even if it breaks down, for the sake of fault tolerance design, it revives itself. The system sparks up again and starts serving all the people that were waiting in a queue, whether you use Kafka or Apache Kafka or RabbitMQ or whatever it is, to be able to process all of that queue that were on standby whilst your system went off. So again, I'm just also excited about this area because I think it's what makes and breaks a unicorn type of a step into becoming a unicorn or not becoming a unicorn. Because the choices and the framework you would have chosen. At some point when you see, do pay attention to that, but I'll move on. Again, the content will be available for you to read further. In the area of having to deal with how fortunate we were, and I say fortunate because I did mechanical engineering and computer science and networking and telecoms almost synchronously. I'm one of those weird people. I get bored easily, so I was doing all of that. So in the space of hardware, the idea is that we won't go deep into it, but if somebody was to take on a VR, an AR headset, or an AR glass, or an MR or an XR experience to build a certain hardware for, these fundamental things you need to pay attention to are the functionalities, efficiency, manufacturability, very, very important. And of course, there you talk about the design of, the design for manufacturability, because there's a way you can design so that you can easily build whatever hardware you want to build. And it's the whole component selection, cost optimization. Then we have reliability, durability, robustness, testability. And I mentioned this before, but fault tolerance of your hardware, so that when there's a fault with even the software, people know exactly, what to expect, whether the system will correct itself or reboot or whatever it is. Then we have safety issues, which is very, very key. If you're going to be building for kids or a certain age, there are compliance and regulatory policies to have. If your app is going to be processing payments or deal with money or adverts or in-app purchases and all, there are rules and regulations to abide by. Again, the time is very small. I'm already over by this slide by I think about 5 minutes, so I have to move on. But if we ever should get into the detailing of it, we look for that all these things will be treated, including but not limited to electrical safety and stuff like that, and user safety and all of those components. Again, scalability, maintainability, standardization, and user interface concepts would have to be taken into consideration for your hardware. All right, now let's move on to the next slide. Development tools and platforms. So here, like I said before, I'll just be quite quick about it. So we start getting into potentially looking at showcasing successful projects in that regard. So in terms of development tools and things that you need, number one would be Unity. So Unity has been a very good buddy for some of us, those of us who were able to build things in AR at a very early stage. And of course, if you want to do a VR project, then definitely Unity is really cool. It's cool because of the type of model they have, with you being able to build something without having to worry so much about paying and licensing and they hackling you for money. You can just quickly start. And of course, I think there's a very good ecosystem around the libraries and packages that you need to be able to build some of these things. And we have Unreal Engine, we have the Arc Kit, we have the AR Core, then we have the whole concepts around the libraries and packages for Microsoft HoloLens. Then we have other things for specifically Oculus Rift and then the HTC Vive. And then when you get into the whole idea of AR glasses, we have the Magic Leap and other tools that you'll be comfortable with. And those are things that you should definitely pay attention to. But let me talk about the basics. So assuming you've never done this before and you definitely want to get into this, it's weird and funny that I'll be telling you that please get used to the basics. The basics are fundamentally trying to understand the core components of what brings all of this together. I will not go all the way down into the other core basics, which is the OSI model layer, where we are talking about the various layers in terms of, for example, how you are seeing the presented screen and my video transmitted from my camera here through the controllers and the board and the CPU all the way to the network, especially the network part of things, and then it being rendered on your side. But I want to talk about things that you can learn and almost immediately start playing with some of these, at least even on your PC. So if you've never studied HTML or HTML5, it's very easy. Just Google HTML5 for dummies. Start playing with it. It can take you roughly between a week to two if you're very serious about it to understand it. Try and understand CSS and JavaScript. That helps too as well, because it helps you understand how to change and tweak and twist these things, because in almost any of these developments that you'll be dealing with or be working with, these fundamentals almost always come into play. So try and understand those ones. Then, of course, you want to try and understand 3D modeling, elements of how you can do keying, how to animate and stuff like that. It can help because, you know, from there on, you're trying to probably jump into the whole Unity thing to start modeling. Blender is a very good software to use. Cinema 4D is a professional enterprise thing that is, it might be expensive for you, but Blender is free, it's open source. You can download it and start working with it, and that should be good as well. In terms of the languages, the other languages you also have to take into consideration. It will be a good thing to look into C or C++ or C#, because at some point you need to write code behind the objects that you've written or designed to be able to make them do, or respond to certain actions based on what the user is doing or how the environment is interacting with each other. So for now, on the development tool side of things, so that I don't end up turning the session into a development session, will be the whole idea of you just trying to know all of these basics and trying to understand all of them. And you should be good. But the other thing is this: you don't have to be the person who does all of this. And that's, I think, for me, I feel that's a beautiful part of it. Some of us have taken on all of this for others who have no clue of what all of these things are, And it's very key for you to collaborate, because if there is somebody there, whether it is Frederick or it's going to be Daniel, who is into mechatronics and they're already doing programming, then by all means, find a way and collaborate with them, because the idea is that when you start getting into this whole issue, and now let me move on to the next slide whilst I wrap up on this one, is that you can't do it all. Just have it in your mind, you can't do it all. If you try it, you break or you won't go far. That African adage or proverb that says that if you want to go far, don't go alone or go with people. If you just really want to go fast, but not necessarily far, then maybe it's just you. Try and collaborate, start networking with people, get to know them, which is also necessary because they're going to be your co-founders and all. And I've always told people in the software space that find a co-founder is almost similar to marrying. Funny thing, the only thing you're not doing is you're not making babies. Comic intended, but this person is going to be with you in your journey. They can make or break whatever it is that you are anticipating, and you could also make or break whatever you are all anticipating. So make sure you know the person, but please collaborate, because you can study all of it. It takes so much time to know all of it, then come and study finance and business and marketing and advertising, and then you're a one-man team. I will never encourage it. Your business cannot scale. The whole idea is that you want to get to a point where if you are not there, the business runs. That's the whole beauty of it. So even once you're doing that, a lot of us here have to take on the role of mentoring others just for free, pro bono. And of course, mentor them and let them go. And I mean that, don't try and cash too much benefits, whatever the benefit is, just help them. Help them, the things you are experiencing here, the things you've gone through, help them. Because these are the same people who become either employees in your company or partners or whatever it is later on in whatever business you're trying to build in VR, AR, MR, and XR. So that is that. Now let's talk about showcasing our successful projects. We have, according to my clock, 2 minutes to wrap up. But yeah, so successful projects. The quick question I really want to throw out here is that you need to have defined what your success is, okay? Because for someone else, the success is maybe total number of users. For someone, it's total number of revenues and so on. So it's very, very key for you to have defined that. And when you finish defining that, you're looking at the context of how success looks like for your team, or how success looks like for your paying users, your non-paying users, your investors, your partners in the business, and so on. But your soulmate may not be part of this one. Yeah, just focus on the ones I mentioned. And then, of course, in the elements of success, and of course, we'll take a look at that. Maybe I'll just bring in the other list of projects, and we'll quickly take a look at them so that we can run faster and start wrapping up. And then, of course, when we get into the metrics, so what are you going to use to measure what your success is? So we have quite a number of metrics that are used in the space in and around business performance metrics, product metrics, agile development metrics, customer satisfaction metrics, revenue. Of course, when we get into the element of business performance, you're looking at revenue, customer lifetime value, CLV. And then, of course, you're looking at elements of monthly recurring revenue, customer acquisition cost, return on investment, which is very, very key. In fact, this one you cannot disregard because, like we said before, there's always going to be costs in and around whatever it is that you're trying to build. And it's very key for you to have paid attention to the idea that if you were to be given, say, 20,000 USD and you threw it into whatever it is that you're about to build for the next 6 months to 1 year, how do you make your money back and how much is it? So did it take you 2 years to get your money back? Did it take you 1 year, 3 months, 5 years, whatever? And how much came on top of the money? It's very, very important for you to pay attention to that. And of course, you will see me hammering on money, because like I said before, passion and the profits should definitely have balance so that you don't just end up being a fanatic of whatever it is that you're building, but you're actually making money to pay people, pay yourself, and keep growing whatever it is that you're trying to put out there, whether it's an artwork, a game, or whatnot. Then we have product metrics. So in the product metrics, we have the idea of how many active users will be using your software, are consistently using your software, the user retention rate, how many people are leaving your software and coming back or leaving and never coming back at all. Then we have the whole idea of churn rate. Then we have the net promoter score, which is very key. How many people are talking to your product or your service or your activity or your game or your art to other people and recommended it to them for them to come and download and use as well. My time is up, but Philip, Joyce, I hope I have like maybe 2 to 5 minutes to wrap up. I hope I can go on.
You can go on, but I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
If I'm not interrupting things. So, quite a number of people who are here are they're wearing two hats. So some of them are doing the various things they do, tech guys, but they're also wearing hats as artists. And one of the major challenge with this and why we put this together was because we realized that the rest of the world appears to have moved on in terms of the kind of art they are putting out there now. So you are having things like projection mapping, you are having, immersive experiences where you go into a space and you're interacting with them. And we would like to start having such stuff happening here on the continent. So not probably not so much wearing VR headsets and all, but attending, let's say, like an art exhibition and being, part of it immersively. How does this tie to what you've been trying to put across today for us in terms of sharing our art experiences, I guess, with the rest of the world? How do we collaborate with tech people to make this happen? Do we really need to deep dive into software to get this happening, or are there easier ways to make this happen? So for instance, maybe I was painting or I'm a dancer, but I want to bring this experience on a larger scale to people at an exhibition. What would be the right way to go? What should we do? And things like that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Philip, for dropping that in. So I'm going to quickly somewhat digress. I would want to believe my screen. Just to confirm, I just placed a sheet on top of the PowerPoint presentation. I want to be sure if it's visible.
It is.
Good. So that I could also bring that into context and relate it to what I'm about to say. So the idea is that in all of this, I think interestingly, like it's been said before, the artist may not necessarily have to stop everything they are doing away from their art or writing or publishing and come and learn all of this engineering. I think this session has more so been about the idea of components that mostly some of us have realized based on clients we've been dealing with, seminars and conferences and people's products that they're trying to build, and potentially the successful ones and the things they did and the things they paid attention to are, and how come they become a success at the levels that they are. So of course, we will take a look at some of them here, which I have on my left here. But the idea is that the artist fundamentally should really focus on how to capture the art experience and bring it into the world for the virtual world for the users to be able to see. So if we're to take a look at, and I want to see if I can bring this up just a second. I'm going to use an example that I am, all too so familiar with, so that it serves as the sort of the baseline. Just a second. Let me bring this on my other screen here. All right, so I'll pull that on my left screen in a jiffy, but I want to just bring that in to share a quick context, just to show us what I want to show. All right, so it should be popping up in a jiffy on my right screen. I'll bring it here so we have a look at it. I'm going to use that because it really shares and shows the idea that you don't need to become an Emmanuel Appiah, to learn all of these things over this long period, but you can focus on your part as an artist. And then we'll come and look at some of the examples on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to play this video here. I'm not sure if the video is visible.
It is. It is.
So are we able to hear the audio?
Play again because I can't hear it. Huh? No.
No, we can't hear it.
Okay.
You may have to share your screen and take the audio button.
Okay, just a second. Let me pause this. Let me see. Multiple advanced sharing options. Let me see multiple participants. Okay. Okay, but the key thing is that it's not even necessary. I just wanted to be sure if you could hear, but the key thing is to take a look at what some of us did back in the day to just show the idea of as an artist, what you should be zooming on. I think this is a shot I wanted to. So for someone like me who was coming into the AR space for the first time, I had no clue whatsoever, you know, to the idea that how do I get my creativity in there? We went through the whole idea of design thinking process with the program that we're doing with British Council and extensively also with UNICEF later on. But the idea was for us to just think through the problem to be sure that we know exactly what we are building, whether it's a painkiller or it's a vitamin, something that's really going to solve a problem, or is just complementing something. So we built that sort of world from the physical into the digital world. We use a package called Vuforia, which you can do. And I'm mentioning Vuforia because, again, AR is, in my opinion and humble opinion, it's easier, way easier to build for. So you could basically be an artist who has actually danced in front of a green screen, recorded that and do a keying so that it becomes transparent and you capture just yourself, embed it into an AR program so that whenever someone picks the app and points it to the trigger, you are basically able to then project that video for them to see, or a 3D model of yourself dancing. There are other hardware you can use to actually capture yourself as an artist to then say, this is exactly the moves I made. I'm projecting it into a 3D character so that I can then bring that into the 3D world to then project and show. Those examples can definitely be seen. I see Rebecca's hand is up. Let me wrap up quickly and then we'll potentially listen to what Rebecca has to say. But this screenshot, as you can see, if it's visible enough, let me check what resolution we have here. Let me see if I can render this into a bit of a higher version so that we can see that. And by all means, please do pardon me if in your experience it felt a bit more like, oh, I want a higher resolution so we can see it. Maybe because of just a second. Let me minimize this and select a higher resolution. Give me a 480 and let's see. So pardon me if it sounded more like a whole overall sort of view, and it's just so broad around things that didn't even address specifically a 3D design or a single code. The idea is that when these things are sorted out, in most cases, the rest are all too so easy because it's so clear in your mind exactly what you want to do and what you're trying to serve to the users or the customers. So that's how come the presentation told to these lines, because there's so many things we need to look at. But the whole idea is that if you're an artist, sorry, and you basically need to capture what it is that you have, then it's very essential for you to have learned a 3D sort of a software. So being able to use Blender or being able to use Cinema 4D to be able to capture what it is that you want to show to your users is very key. And I'm trying to render my Blender here so that maybe, just maybe, if the artist type of questions do come up, we can take a look at them. I don't have Unity on this one, but I have Unity on my other MacBook here. So if it becomes necessary, but I doubt that we would jump into that space. But the ability for you to have been able to understand how to use fundamental softwares like Blender to be able to create a world, or to be able to embed whatever video or audio content you have, bind it together, or it could be an image. Maybe you have an image that you're trying to work on, but you want to give it a sense of texture, feel, shapes, and all of that stuff. Then it's very key. Without understanding Blender or being able to bring the Blender design into Unity or Unity itself, then it's almost impossible for you to do that. There are other technologies that could have been used without you having to worry about this. You could use certain specific cameras, or this camera. We use this camera a lot. I'm sure you can see. There's a Canon 60D, which basically helps you to, it's not a very high expensive camera, but it basically helps you to do the work that you want to do by being able to capture a video or take certain shots and bring it into the 3D world to do your compositions and layering and stuff like that, there are certain instances where you wanted a certain texture. The 3D software is not giving you that texture. You could actually take your camera here, go take a picture of the surface, and bring it into the 3D world to be able to use for whatever texture you want to sort of like really drive at. So more specifically for artists, on any day, I would not encourage that go learn software development. I don't think it would be an option I'll vote for on any day. Not at all. I would always vote a no. For artists, it will really be more about getting more involved in how you can convert your physical world experience into a digital world. So just like I mentioned, whenever you pick your camera and you shoot a picture, is the physical world that you are bringing into a digital world. You can then bring that image or video or recorded session into a software and then work with it. Then you can bring it into the virtual world or in your augmented reality world. Philip, I hope this helps. I just hope it helps, but it's just that there's a lot to do, and it's my hope and prayer that if we should be able to do the program, then by all means those detailings would have been more addressed, where it's no more going to be about trying to know design principles or all of that stuff. Of course, those things would have been discussed as part of a praise sort of view in the course, but then we'll go deep into the idea of how do you model, what are the shapes, where do you find the functions from, and all of that stuff. But the softwares I've mentioned are those that, as an artist, please pay attention, make time, and understand them. Even if you will not be the one to do them, understand how it works so that if you're to collaborate with somebody, you know exactly how to communicate with them. So collaboration will be key. Honestly, it will be really, really, really key for you to get to this point. The other thing I want to just mention about collaboration quickly between the artists and engineers has almost always been the idea that in a lot of cases, people would come to an engineer or a developer and say, oh, I want you to help me build this. The conversation starts very nicely and cool. Then sometime along the line, the engineer reached out to the artist, and then the artist said, oh, you're still working on this. Oh, sorry, I've changed my mind. I'm not working on this anymore. So please try and avoid that. And of course, make sure that the structure with a collaboration and try and get a skin in the game. By way of a skin in the game, some engineers and developers expect that you would have committed to maybe paying for some domains or even probably putting money on the table so that it can keep them going while they do that. Because in most cases, if you, the artist, you change your mind and you don't want it anymore, it's the designer or the engineer who loses out and they are left hanging. They could have been doing something else to get a job elsewhere, but you smooth talk them into helping you, and then now you've changed your mind. And for me, it's happened to me countless number of times. Probably that's why I'm highlighting it, because then we have a good number of people who are not software engineers, but are doing something else. If you're going to engage somebody like that, please make sure there's structure and make sure there's communication as well. Philip, I hope this helps. Sorry.
Emmanuel, I'm just going to say so much thanks from our side here, because you've really done extensively well on this. I don't know if the artists in the room are not busy scratching their heads because they were hopeful that when you were done, they could just charge out the Get One app, play around with it a bit and create magic. I see that the collaboration stories must continue, but I'm just going to, while you now talk about maybe the apps that are available, I'm going to ask Rebecca to ask her questions, and then anyone else who has questions should go right ahead and do that now, because it's time for us to leave the lectures and then just have this interactive session where we can truly ask what's on our mind. I can see someone has put a question who says, I think Salamatu says, practicals would enhance on how to experience this. So maybe something that was physical. So I'm just hoping that everyone can ask questions now, and we'll start with Rebecca while we're at it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I think the hands are coming up. So let's just deep dive and discuss. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Rebecca, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, it's not a question. It's a suggestion. I'm also thinking that probably next time, Emmanuel could also focus on, based on the question that you asked on NFTs, which is any digital content or asset that can be tokenized to just sell on the digital market like OpenSea. So if maybe an artist work, you can just digitize it or tokenize it and then sell on as an NFT. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's really key. Because that brings into context, blockchain, and design and art. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that. I'm definitely taking note on that one. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think Imam can go ahead and unmute and ask his question.
So good day. Thank you for this lecture and the discussion. My question, I have 3 questions. The first question is about the Panadol and the vitamin C as regards the VR. Now, in the African economy, Nigeria and Ghana or Africa in the full context, how is VR or how can VR become your Panadol? Because in reality, people don't see the value in VR, not now that it hasn't caught up to reality as in Europe and other places. That's the first question. The second question is, I'm building a mobile game and I'm trying to integrate VR into it. I'm trying to see how we can get a game room and that. And I'm discussing with somebody, and he said he mentioned that for you to get VR, you have to buy online space. I want to understand. You have to buy like a land online. I don't understand how the virtual reality works. If you can shed more light on that, because take for instance, if I have a museum or I have a game room or something, how does that work? And then the third question is, Africa doesn't have a lot of resources. When I talk about a marketplace for VR gadgets, how do we get into that? Because for VR or augmented reality to become popular, they have to be a marketplace where people can get this thing. What are the prospects, or what are you seeing in respect to that going forward? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Imam. Okay, so I'll take it from the top. Yeah, you mentioned about the Panadol and vitamin thing. So I want to use an area where it's been, or a set of areas where it's been massively huge when it comes to VR, AR, MR, especially, not necessarily XR yet, but that those have massively been a painkiller. So when you go into a place like the automobile industry, it would have cost them so much time and money just to do the clay modeling and shaping, then do the metal work, and then compared to the simulation on PC before it comes out. And it's very expensive. It takes so long because physical objects are, like involved. If you make a mistake, you have to go destroy it and do it again. We have to do it all over again, and it costs money. But by using a VR or an AR too, fundamentally, all of this basically can be done inside the software space, and you don't have to spend so much money. The only difference would have been the element of tactileness or the feedback you get from the said model that you're trying to do. But even that, there are also simulations we have. So if you came into a place like Blender or Cinema 4D, then there are simulations that you can have where the same air pressure and wind and things that you wanted to have done to the objects in the real world, you can actually bring that object into the 3D world and apply those speed of wind and pressures to it and see how the object behaves. And interestingly, it does a very good job, when you do that, because then it's all graphical, it's in there, you get all the feedbacks and stuff like that before you start spending on a physical thing. There are other things within the education space where now the VR or AR would then become a very critical painkiller as opposed to just a vitamin, in that if we're supposed to have taken like a field trip and go all the way to some place to experience some element of a geological experience with either climate change or whatnot, then that can be programmed into the VR or an AR experience. The students or whoever want to experience it could just go through that world without having to move out there where it might be either too expensive or too dangerous or almost impossible to go. So things like simulations of carbon monoxide or volcanic eruptions and all of that stuff, you obviously would not want to expose people to that. So you can do those simulations in there. And that becomes, this time it's not just a vitamin. The element of the vitamin thing is, respectfully, if I just went ahead to create some sort of a flying experience where I am happy as I fly in there and it gives me the trails and all. Let's face it, sincerely, if I didn't fly in the VR and I didn't put the headset on for a day or 2 or 3 or a week without doing that flying thing, and I had my food, I had my basic Maslow's elements, I'll be fine. I didn't, and I wouldn't have to worry about being able to fly in a VR. So there's that sort of differentiator. If your VR project or AR project is going to help really cut down costs or solve some major physical world, real world problem, then there's a very high chance that is putting your solution or your development or your design, you and your team, into the space of the Panadol. You're offering a Panadol in the VR, AR, MR, XR space. So that's what I can say. The last one I just really want to touch on is simulations in military trainings or in other simulations in medical settings where it would have been so expensive to get a cadaver to be cutting or some actual human being to be dissecting and, and all of that stuff. You can just imagine how expensive that could be and sometimes even uncomfortable. But with the VR, AR, you can do that. Of course, in law enforcement, you can have all of those simulations done so you can train people appropriately and all of that. That is a painkiller. It may not necessarily be a vitamin at all because it's needed. It's solving a problem. It's cutting down costs massively. It's dealing with a major problem and all of that. So that's what I have to say about that. The elements on whether you are buying a land in the digital space or not, the quick thing I could say to that is that in the whole virtual space, there are various people with various brands and businesses with their own worlds. So if you're going to build in their world, then that's where the purchasing comes in place, where you need to have understood what it means to have a space within their world to plant your world as well. And of course, it's done based on analysis on your collaborative patterns that you want to have or the type of users that are available in those worlds that you also want to have access to. Somebody built that world and you want to be there. You have to pay to be there. But you can also take on a very massive adventure for yourself and create a world for yourself and your team and bring all of us into it. Then we would come and buy a land or buy space within your world as well. So that is what I have to say about that. I will be sharing lots of information around some of these things and possibly about the question that Rebecca asked around the NFT thing, so that we have a continual addition to the file. So I think contrary to maybe sharing a PDF, no, it'll be a link so that all these other resources and questions that have been asked, I will go ahead and add content relating to that so you can definitely take a look at that. Elements of trends in AR, VR, and MR technologies. There is the anticipation that the tech is just too bulky, it's too expensive. A lot of people don't have it. I don't have it. I don't have the VR headset. Most of our simulations are done through Unity and all of that stuff. We have a cardboard simulation where you can plant a mobile device that could render through Unity, so you can experience it without having to spend the $5,000 or $3,000 or $1,500 for whatever type of headset you want to have. But the idea is that the future is really more on pointing towards the reduction size of the hardware, and then, of course, a better experience in texture, better experience in all the other tactile and sensations within the virtual space. Because like you and I know, I have a pen that I'm holding now. I can hold it. The question is, would we be able to get there in the near future where within the VR, MR, XR space, especially the XR space, where if the software engineer or the artist programmed a certain object, when I hold it, I can feel it that I'm holding it and I can feel the weight. Those are very tricky things to deal with. Being able to simulate some of these things in the real world by putting pressure on the muscle or putting pressure on the glove, digital glove that I'll put on, or whatever the sensation is, it can be a very tricky one to sort of like really deal with. And that's where consistently is like really pointing to. Then we have elements of computation power is also an issue still, because the more detailed your content is going to be, especially for the 3D modeling and rendering, the more CPU power you definitely would have to have needed to be able to render it better and correctly for your users and all. Then there's an issue of forward and backward compatibility issues, because some of the things that we build now, in some few years' time, those old users will not be able to use anymore. They have to upgrade. And sometimes it might involve they abandoning the hardware and jumping onto a new hardware. There are questions and debate around who pays for that sort of transition, because you have spent some, and of course in Africa, that money is not cheap. Paying for a $900 or $1,000 or even $300 worth of headset gear. And then in 2-3 years time, maybe they tell you, oh, it's a cake now. You don't have to use this. You can't use this. You have to use this new technology. How would that look like? Could we send it back to the factories and get like a rebate and add something to get a new headset and all? So all of that. Then there are elements of compliance and regulatory policies around the idea of what can be built in the VR and AR space. We've had, sorry, a very recent incident with one Johannes. Some of us know her from movies and stuff like that. Being able to use someone's face or voice or content within the virtual world, and what does the law say about it? There are a lot of gray areas in these areas when it comes to content usage, data usage, elements of the GDPR policy, are all issues that are still being dealt with. It's not all too settled yet in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed. Fundamentally, there are certain things which may be obscene. If you're going to use someone's head on top of a naked body, then it's an issue. If you don't take care, your development could be halted and stuff like that. Or certain depictions which go against certain norms and cultures of certain users in certain countries or certain jurisdictions and demographics. Those are issues that can also come back to bite you. But the question here is, would AI and technologies that we are putting together help us to be able to bridge this? So if someone from Saskatchewan picked your headset and put it on based on their culture, as against someone who is an Igbo or a Nigerian or Ghanaian or a Togolese, the context between what is allowed and what is not allowed, elements of parental control and guardianship with the technologies you're about to build. Who guards the guard and who guards the watchman, and who is the watchman watching? So who is building what for who, and who is approving what content is allowed in the space or not? A lot of these things are very gray areas, and it leaves a lot of room for high-level anthropological discussions and elements around policy making, and of course, philosophies around what is allowed, what is not allowed, and so on and so forth. So it's a huge myriad of things. Then there's an element of currency. So currency spending in the virtual world is a very interesting one, in that if you're going to build your new currency, or you're going to use any of the already running currencies, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the other ones, then there's a question around, is this something that is allowed for the said user who is using it in that country, as against the law, and what is allowed by the respective central banks in all the other countries that you're trying to publish into? So these are areas that are more so gray, because the technology, as we've heard it for a very long time now, respectfully hasn't become mainstream globally. It is not mainstream whatsoever yet. It also presents itself as a very interesting opportunity, which is to say that it's in its whole zygote stage and futures level, where you can actually have an influence, major influence on what is allowed and what is not allowed, what policy should be drafted and what policy should not be drafted, what should be considered, what should not be considered, and all of that stuff. So there's that pros and cons of it to say. It's very new. It presents itself as an opportunity, but it's also new, and it presents itself with a lot of issues that you don't even just know that what you're about to do might flaunt a rule somewhere or not, which might make users not be able to use your software or use your VR project or AR project or MR project. And that's what I have to say about that. Imam, okay, I hope this helps, but I definitely promise I'll be adding more content on this in the sheet that we'll be sharing, as you can see on my left side.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Do we have more questions? Rebecca, I saw your hand up. Do we have more questions, or can I? Yes, please.
I was just going to ask you to please share the document you'd like to share at this time, so that people can have it, and we can start growing that community as people key into it, see what you're doing, ask questions thereafter here, so that I think it just grows organically from there. I think also that our time is really fast spent, but the truth is, these are just conversations we will keep having. And that's the essence of an exercise like this, where we can all come together, rub minds, and figure out what's next for us as a continent, finding out where our directions lie. Just like you've mentioned earlier, the things that are acceptable within our own context, as opposed to what's going on out there, what is morally correct, what is ethical, what should we do, and all of that. If you have any last things to say, because I see you still have, maybe you want to say one or two things, would be happy to hear you. And I think after we can then bring the meeting to a close.
Okay. So the other thing or things I would have wanted to have addressed fundamentally comes down to I think I've mentioned indirectly, I've actually dealt with some of the elements of best practices by way of the questions that Imam asked with regards to user experience and technical consideration and the ones that you also brought up with content creation. And again, please do bear with us. The session is just too short for us to gotten into how do you actually build one right now. But like Philip said, this is going to be a continuous thing. And the idea will be to continuously help serve content through that sheet I'll be sharing. I'll make the sheet very open for view-only purpose for the general sort of thing. And then, of course, that should be it. Let me copy the link and share here, and then I'll just modify the permissions in a jiffy so that we see it. But all I want to say is that let's turn on our creativity, sort of like minds on, because this is a very gray space. It's almost akin to the idea of what some of us are dealing with in the telecommunications space. I have read quite a number of the rules and policies and legalities around what is allowed in frequency broadcasting and stuff. There's so many gray areas, and beautifully we are taking advantage of all of that in a very nice and humble way at Air Receive by ensuring that we are building something that allows smartphone devices connect, whether there's internet or not, and we will not be flaunting in a room, would definitely be able to serve users. So in the space of VR, AR, MR, XR, there's just so much to do. Honestly, it's at its nascent stages. If you compare it to computing, you could just be looking at it from the perspective of the 1960s and the 1970s of this and how it's supposed to be. Because one of the things which have been forecasted is that AR will definitely get into the eyes. What it means is that all the computation power will be on your iris, and that you don't have to wear anything. You would have a more tiny earphone behind your ear. All the tactile senses might be a glove that you wear. All the other senses might be something pegged at your shoulders to give you the feeling that the developer would have wanted you to feel, and all of that stuff. So just expand your imagination around it and keep playing with this. But the idea is I'm also trusting that in effect, we'll be able to get to a point where we might have a session where it's not anymore about looking at the gross picture around things to consider, the principles and all that, but this time actually building it, putting the system together. And potentially I would have opted for starting with AR because it's very easy. You have the mobile device right now. We could build it, we could share it, and you can start playing with it. You point to a certain thing that we program in the system, and a 3D object pops up like I was trying to show you here. The text you are seeing here, that's if you can still see my screen, is something that shows up. It's only something that shows up after you point your phone camera to the Coca-Cola bottle, and then it tells you how much is it worth, the quantities that are needed, so that you can submit it and make some money. So we could get into some of these developments where for those that were looking at, for example, how am I going to write a book so that when the book is launched, if you downloaded the AR app with it, you can actually see a lot of the content that are intended for you to see as a reader. So you can point your mobile device to it, and you enter into a whole new world that those who read only the physical book will not be able to have access to, based on certain indicators and what we call markers. You put markers printed as part of the book. It could look like a QR code. It could look like any specific design or icon or image that you have put in the book. The system will pick that image and respond to it based on the training you've done with it. and it will show you, just like you saw in the video I just showed you. And just to give you an idea of how simple it is, we built that thing in under 1 day. Of course, after about 2 weeks of training in this development at Kumasi Hive here in Ghana. So I look forward that we definitely will get into that part of things to be able to build something like that in some session or one session, maybe online, maybe physically, but I'll leave that decision to Philip and Joyce. I think that'll be all for me for now. By extension, we have indirectly also spoken about the idea of future trends. We've also spoken about elements of best practices by extension of the questions that came. Q&A has been dealt with. And in conclusion, I just really want to say thank you so much for having me. I know it has been a very short session. Maybe for some of us, we didn't really address all the things that you wanted to have. Please have mercy on us and with us. We know that by extension, there will be other sessions where we go deep into where you can bring yourself, your friends, your colleagues to experience the actual building and development of it. But this content will continue. So let me now stop the sharing, and then I would, of course, share the link to the document so that we would take it off from there. Philip, thank you so much. Joyce, thanks for having me, and all the other team from Kavik. It's been a very great honor, to have been called upon to come and help with this. Let me paste this in the chat and allow the permissions on it before we wrap up. That'll be all from me for now. Possibly mic on, but quiet, and over to you, Philip, and the team at Kavik.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much, Emmanuel, for being amazing as always. Thank you for taking the time off your very busy schedule to speak to us and to speak to our hearts concerning this. I was looking at the numbers when people join. I was like, we should have much more. But then I realized that quite a number of people, when you put out the ad with this, which is also what we're trying to do, is that people just assume that, oh, it's a tech thing. And so for that, they might not really want to be part of it. But I'm so happy seeing the participation today that indeed we have people from across the spectrum. I know quite a couple of them are artists, either spoken word artists, writers, and all the other things they do alongside their 9 to 5. But it's great to have had this conversation. I'm going to quickly use this opportunity to tell those who are in the Abuja area that our physical session is coming up. And just like Emmanuel is saying, who knows, you might just be seeing him face to face. We really don't know, So if you haven't registered for that, please do. For those who have registered, it's going to be a strictly curated event. So we'll be reaching out to you guys very soon for those who made the cut, and we'll tell you next steps as far as that is concerned. I think Rebecca still wants to ask a question. So if it's a question that we can deal with, yes, please. But I think Emmanuel has said his goodbyes. The link is now there. And for those of you who are still here online, please, you can quickly get that link. It connects you directly to Emmanuel, and you can continue to have your conversations directly with him. We shall be sharing the recordings when we put it all together, not just this session, but the one from the previous one. And we also want to encourage everyone who was here today to come along next Friday when we get together to do this again. Trust me, we keep raising the bar, and I think next week will not be any different. So Rebecca, please go ahead, ask your question, and yes, we'll be done.
Thank you, Philip. Please, I just want to know something, because as when I joined, I heard Emmanuel talking about a network, and now I heard you also talking about a kind of meeting in Abuja also. But someone just sent me the link because that is my research area. I just want to find out, is it for a particular group of people, or just anyone at all can just participate in the meetings, like webinars?
I think I'm the one who will have to answer this. So the meeting is open to everyone. We started this virtual sessions, or this particular session, both virtual and physical, by trying to bring together tech people and creatives to have discussions and find areas of collaboration where they could work together and do things together and help themselves grow, especially in the African ecosystem, because we realize that this happens so often out there, but it's not happening here. There's still so many conversations. Emmanuel touched on one or two things that may be a challenge. For instance, involving a software person and then somewhere along the line changing your mind. Creatives tend to move on. And so we really want to bridge those gaps and see how people can work together, collaborate together, and build each other's practice. So it's open to everyone. We put the call out there, rather we put the ad out there, and whosoever is interested, we're happy to have them join us. It's welcome. If you have friends, if you have family who you think should participate from this, let us know. Send us an email and we'll always send you the links. In fact, once you've signed on like this, it's very likely that next week's Zoom link will be sent to you by default. So you can choose if the topic is something you're interested in and you want to be part of or not. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Philip, thanks so much. I just wanted to know what the policy of CAVIC is. Can I share a contact?
Please go right ahead.
Okay.
So I'm going to. The whole excess is to have people hang on to your coat strings and just run with you, your coattails rather, and just run with you.
Okay.
We're always happy to have you guys who have the time and are doing great things on the continent, mentor people who are coming up. So every opportunity or every privilege you want to share, please go right ahead and do that. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you for considering it as well.
Sure. So I'm definitely sharing this. Those were saying you couldn't see the link before. Forgive me. I earlier just shared with only Kavik, so I've made it available to everybody. So you should be able to see it. I'm definitely adding my WhatsApp number because I think that should be easily accessible for everybody. And of course, my Gmail account. Feel free to book a session. Mostly I prefer after 1700 if it's a pro bono session. So that you just send me a calendar invite and then I'll take a look and add it to my calendar. I'm also available potentially on weekends. Just share the time. If it's not good, I'll just request for another time. Then we'll just go through and see what time works for both of us, and then we could have a session. So I just shared my WhatsApp line and my Gmail account. By all means, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn via linkedin.com/in/EMMAPP. That should also take you to my LinkedIn profile. By all means, let's connect and move on from there. Once again, Kavik, thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to the more detailed session where we actually build something. Yeah, that'll be all from me for now. Michael, and over to us. Michael.
Emmanuel, thank you so much once again, like I said. I'm just going to leave this in this at the end of this session. Please, for those who have accepted graciously to mentor, let's be mindful of their time and the things they do. And so when you need to ask a question, please be very civil about it. And if they don't get back to you as soon as possible, just know that sometime soon they will. And it's very important to respect their space and their time and not make it a burden, because sometimes it becomes, and then people don't want to keep giving back to the community. So please, let's be mindful of that. And I think someone is asking, can we connect with you on Instagram? Emmanuel is on Instagram, but I don't think he's an Instagram person.
Maybe because of them, I would become.
So just follow the links first, and I think we can have that conversations offsite here on in. Thank you so much for being part of this. We really appreciate you, all of you. I'm just going to ask us to want to take a virtual picture. So Teddy, could you take a picture for us, or who would take a picture for us as it is? Teddy, could you take a virtual picture for us before we all go off?
So I can, but I don't have my camera connected right now. So it's just going to be the group.
So who's going to take this for us before we start losing people?
Okay, so can anyone who can turn on their cameras?
I think I just, let me see. Yeah, I think I already done, so that's great. So thank you, folks. Picture taken. We'll just say thank you to everyone, and we'll call it a day. See you guys soon. Taye, I got your message. If you're in the Abuja area, we'll be in touch soon, like I said. You guys all have a great day, and thank you so much for being part of this. We'll see you guys virtually maybe in a week from now. Have a wonderful afternoon. Rebecca, hands up still. Okay.
No. I was just clapping.
Okay, just waving at us. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So see you guys have a lovely weekend and great holiday for those of us who would be participating in the Salah holidays. See you soon. Thank you and God bless you.
Bye. All right. Cheers then. Bye.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
All right, you're most welcome.